Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that, well, digs into foundational documents, cuts through the complexity, and gives you the analysis you need to really grasp modern strategy.
And today we're tackling something pretty significant, a really advanced look at the core ideas behind how the United States conducts joint military operations.
Yeah, this isn't just a vocabulary list. We're exploring the deep why and how U.S. forces are actually set up to, well, to fight and win today.
Exactly. And we're grounding this entirely in the doctrine itself, specifically Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Publication 318 on forcible entry, and the overarching Joint Publication 30 on joint operations.
These are the blueprints.
They really are. Our goal here is to synthesize these, to analyze how the joint warfighting concept connects to unified action, and how both enable that really complex, high-risk mission, joint forcible entry.
We want to see how they fit together, where the connections are, maybe even where some friction points exist within the doctrine.
Precisely, looking for those interdependencies.
So if you're aiming for that immediate high-level understanding, that analytical grasp of how the U.S. military is structured doctrinally to operate across this complex world we're in, you're definitely in the right place.
Especially in contested environments, that's key.
Absolutely. We're going straight to the heart of how the joint force is really organized for that challenge. Okay, let's start at the top, the strategic mandate. When we talk about the purchase of the U.S. military, Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 frames it in a couple of ways, right? Duty and consequence.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, fundamentally, it starts with the oath to support and defend the Constitution.
Right.
But it expands from there, protecting the American people, our interests abroad. But, you know, Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 also adds this historical lens. It points out that for decades, our strength, with allies, it deterred another great power war.
Which was a huge success.
A massive success. But the document warns against complacency. It says, freedom is never guaranteed. It takes constant vigilance.
And part of that vigilance is adaptation. Because the very character of war isn't static. It's changed.
Fundamentally changed. That's the core argument across these foundational publications. They see an unprecedented shift. And the warning is pretty stark, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, it suggests that the window we've had for decades, that enduring competitive advantage, it's closing, actively closing.
So adaptation isn't optional.
It's mandatory, and that's where the joint warfighting concept comes in. It's presented as the unifying vision. It's designed to ensure that military activities are nested directly, right under the national security strategy and the national defense strategy.
Creating that clear link from national policy all the way down to, well, operational execution.
Exactly, a seamless connection.
So it's like a strategic roadmap.
Yeah.
What are the main destinations on that map? Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 gives us 4 sort of top defense priorities, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's critical to know these. First, always defend the homeland. That's bedrock. Second, deterring strategic attacks. Not just against the U.S., but allies and partners, too. It's a global posture.
Right. Deterrence is key.
Third is deterring aggression more broadly while, and this is crucial, being ready to prevail in conflict if deterrence fails, decisively.
Preparedness for the worst case.
And fourth, ensuring our future military advantage. That speaks to investment, research, development, constantly adapting.
Thinking long term.
But underpinning all 4 priorities is this doctrinal challenge. It pushes warfighters to fundamentally rethink how they maneuver through space and time in what's described as an exceptionally challenging, fast-paced environment.
That speed, that challenge, it brings us straight to the competition continuum, doesn't it? This isn't just a theoretical model. It's presented as the day-to-day reality.
It is the perpetual reality. Joint Publication 30, and the other documents echo this, lays out this framework for global engagement. It has 3 main elements: cooperation, competition, and armed conflict, or war.
And the key distinction is?
The doctrine really stresses this. Cooperation and competition are perpetual. They are always happening, sometimes with the same actors, even at the same time. Armed conflict, that's the variable. It might happen, it might not.
Okay, let's unpack cooperation first. Because it sounds simple, like alliances, but the doctrine suggests it's more nuanced, maybe even transactional.
That's a really important nuance. Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 defines cooperation as enduring activity, purposeful actions toward policy goals. But what's really interesting is the acknowledgement that you might need to cooperate in specific, limited ways, even with actors who are otherwise neutral or even adversarial.
Like what? Give us an example.
Think counter-piracy operations, or maybe disaster relief, or freedom of navigation exercises. These are areas where nations with, frankly, competing long-term strategic goals might find a common immediate interest.
So it's practical, calculated engagement based on shared short-term needs.
Exactly. It's not about friendship. It's about achieving a specific outcome.
Okay, so if cooperation is about finding temporary common ground, strategic competition is the opposite. It's that constant jostling for position, short of actual fighting, often in that gray zone.
Precisely. Strategic competition, as the doctrine frames it, is all about seeking influence and advantage, but using non-military or non-coercive means primarily.
How does that work?
Well, the doctrine notes that the most successful competitor often avoids outright conflict. They use strategies of what it calls co-optation and attraction.
Co-optation and attraction, explain those a bit.
Right. So this is where you see the use of economic leverage, information campaigns, diplomatic pressure. The goal, as described in Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, is kind of subtle.
Go on.
It's about establishing rules, maybe international norms or structures, and then attracting other countries to follow them. You incentivize compliance, maybe penalize defiance, so that the system itself structurally favors your interests.
So you're shaping the environment.
Exactly. The aim is to achieve U.S. objectives by working with allies, obviously, but also by subtly influencing adversary choices, guiding them, maybe constraining them, without ever firing a shot.
That sounds like it requires a very long-term view.
Generations, not just election cycles, as the doctrine implies. It's continuous strategic thinking.
And managing all this cooperation, competition, preparing for conflict across the whole government and with international partners. That demands some kind of unified approach. Which brings us to unified action.
Unified action. That's the doctrinal term for getting everyone pulling in roughly the same direction. Joint Publication 3.0 defines it as the synchronization, coordination, and alignment of activities.
Who's involved?
It's the U.S. military working with, well, everyone else. Multinational forces, international organizations like the UN, and interorganizational partners, think other U.S. government agencies.
Toward common objectives.
That's the goal. Unity of effort.
Okay, now unity of command within the military, that's straightforward. Hierarchical. Orders are given. But unity of effort, that sounds messy, especially with partners who report to totally different bosses, different governments, different laws.
And that is precisely the challenge highlighted in the doctrine. Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 really hammers this point. Facilitating that unity of effort with interagency partners, interorganizational partners, it's absolutely essential for mission success, but it's inherently difficult.
Why difficult?
Because the key distinction is these partners, the State Department, USAI, NGOs, the UN, they are not under military command.
Right.
So the Joint Force Commander can't just issue orders. They have to lead through influence, collaboration, negotiation. They have to build consensus outside the Department of Defense structure.
That's a different kind of leadership challenge.
Absolutely. And the doctrine warns that if you fail to achieve that unified action, the whole mission could be jeopardized. Easily.
And then you throw multinational forces into this mix. The complexity must just explode. Joint Publication 3.0 mentions some real friction points there.
It does. The friction points are systemic and numerous. You're dealing with differences in national laws, cultural norms, language barriers.
Even old rivalries.
Yes. Potentially managing historical animosities between coalition members who now have to fight together. And critically, different capabilities. Not all partners bring the same resources or expertise.
So Joint Force Commander's job becomes even harder.
Immensely. They have to find that common ground among objectives, promote unity towards shared goals, even when partner nations might prioritize things differently based on their own domestic politics or national interests. It demands constant diplomacy right there at the operational level just to keep the military effort cohesive.
Okay, so we have this framework for global operations. Cooperation, competition, unified action. But what happens when deterrence fails? Or when competition escalates to the point where we need to project power into a place that doesn't want us there?
Then you run headlong into the dominant challenge of modern power projection, anti-access and area denial, often shortened to A2AD, but we'll stick to the full terms.
Anti-access and area denial. What's the adversary's fundamental goal with these capabilities?
Pure and simple. Deny us access, deny us freedom of action. Joint Publication 3.18, which covers Joint Forcible Entry, explains it clearly. These capabilities are meant to restrict our movement or stop it entirely.
Why? What's the benefit for them?
It allows the enemy to mass their own forces, to repel our assaults, basically to fight on their terms in a place and time of their choosing. They're trying to create barriers, physical, electronic, informational, to defeat us before we can even bring our full strength to bear.
And the Doctrine points out something interesting, that these aren't just high-tech missile systems, right? It's a spectrum.
That's a crucial point. The threat isn't monolithic. Joint Publication 318 highlights this range. Yes, you might face highly advanced, integrated, layered defenses. Think sophisticated missiles, sensors, command and control systems all working together.
The high-end threat.
Right. But it could also be innovative uses of very basic, even crude capabilities. The Doctrine uses the example of, say, clandestine networks using improvised explosive devices. That's a form of area denial, too.
So the Joint Force Commander has to plan for both sophisticated long-range missiles and low-tech ambushes or mines.
Simultaneously. That's the complexity. You need countermeasures for the advanced systems, but also the ability to deal with distributed low-tech threats that might pop up anywhere.
And the big strategic shift this creates is the end of safe havens. Rear areas aren't safe anymore.
That's perhaps the most profound implication spelled out in Joint Publication 318. Deploying forces, moving supplies, setting up bases, even activities happening what we used to think of as secure rear areas. They are now vulnerable at much greater ranges than before.
Because the weapons can reach further.
Exactly. If an adversary has integrated defenses that can reach hundreds, maybe thousands of miles out, then the whole logic of how you project force, how you sustain it, it changes completely.
Every ship, every plane, every logistics hub could potentially be a target from the moment it deploys.
Correct. The idea of a truly protected staging base, far from the fight, that's largely obsolete against a capable adversary. Every part of the operation has to assume it might be under attack.
Okay, so if the enemy's strategy is to hit us where we're vulnerable, maybe hit single points of failure, how does the joint warfighting concept counter that? What's the doctrinal answer?
Resilience. That's the word used throughout the Doctrine, especially in Joint Publication 1, Volume 1. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back psychologically after a hit. It's a deliberate structural requirement for the force itself.
How do you build that structural resilience? What does it look like?
It's a combination of things. Good training, personnel readiness, physical protection measures, sure. But structurally, the Doctrine emphasizes concepts like depth, redundancy, exchangeability, interoperability, and dispersal.
Break those down a little.
Okay. Depth means having reserves, strategic reserves, so you can replace losses or augment forces. Redundancy means having multiple ways to do the same critical task, multiple communication systems, multiple supply routes.
So one hit doesn't take out the whole capability.
Exactly. Interoperability means different systems and forces can work together seamlessly. Dispersal means not concentrating your forces or critical assets in one place, making them a tempting target. You spread things out.
Making it harder for the enemy to land that single knockout blow.
That's the goal. To organize the force so that one attack, even a significant one, isn't incapacitating. You preserve the ability to fight over time, but it's complex, it's expensive, and the Doctrine says it's absolutely mandatory.
And achieving that resilience, operating despite these anti-access and area denial threats, it demands something the Doctrine calls joint all-domain operations, right? Integrating everything.
Yes. Joint all-domain operations are seen as essential to overcome these layered defenses. Joint Publication 3.0 is very clear. The Joint Force has to operate and address threats across all the domains simultaneously.
Which domains are we talking about?
The physical ones?
Yeah.
Land, maritime, air, and space. But also, critically, the information environment, which includes cyberspace and the electromagnetic spectrum.
You have to be able to fight and win in all of them at once.
And not just in them, but across them. The real challenge isn't just having capabilities in each domain, it's the synchronization, the command and control that links them together.
Especially when the enemy is actively trying to break those links, right? Jamming communications, cyber attacks.
That's the absolute heart of the problem. The concept demands seamless global integration. Joint Publication 4, Volume 1 talks about this achieving a cohesive arrangement of military actions in time, space, and purpose.
Give me an example of that synchronization.
Imagine coordinating a submarine launching a missile in the maritime domain, with a cyber operation disrupting enemy air defenses in the information environment, while friendly aircraft maintain air superiority, all relying on satellite communications operating in the space domain.
And if the command and control fails, if that link breaks,
then the synchronized threat disappears. The enemy's layered defenses only have to face piecemeal attacks, which they are designed to defeat. Failure in command and control means the defense likely wins.
So just getting into the theater, establishing access, basing, and overflight ABO, but let's call it by its full name, that's a huge challenge in itself against these threats.
A monumental challenge. And the advanced planning considerations really focus on what you need after you gain initial access, just to preserve your combat power.
What kinds of things?
Survivability, redundancy, and deception. Those three are key. Survivability includes active defenses like missile interceptors, but also passive things like hardening facilities or camouflage.
Okay.
Redundancy, we talked about backup systems, alternate supply routes, multiple command posts. And deception is crucial, making the enemy guess where you really are, what your real strength is, what your intentions are. It buys you time.
Buys time to consolidate that foothold. And this often involves using international waters, airspace.
Invariably, extensive use of the global commons is assumed.
And then comes sustainment. We keep circling back to logistics. Projecting power globally, especially when supply lines are under constant threat from long-range fires, it comes down to the basics, doesn't it? The classes of supply.
Absolutely. The ability to fight hinges entirely on getting the right stuff to the right place at the right time. The doctrine highlights specific critical classes.
Which ones?
Class 1, subsistence food and water. Class 3, petroleum, oils, lubricants, fuel, basically. Class 5, ammunition. Class 8, medical supplies. And Class 9, repair parts.
The essentials.
The absolute essentials. And if the enemy, as Joint Publication 7, Volume 1 points out they likely will, successfully targets your ports, your airfields, your supply convoys.
Which are now vulnerable even in the rear.
Right. Then the whole operation grinds to a halt very quickly. Forces consume their on-hand supplies rapidly, especially ammunition and fuel in high-intensity combat.
So the logistic structure itself needs that same resilience, depth, redundancy.
It has to mirror the combat force. Planning must assume you'll lose ships, you'll lose aircraft, you might lose major supply depots. You need pre-planned alternate distribution methods ready to go just to keep those 5 vital classes flowing.
Okay, we've laid out the strategic thinking, the joint warfighting concept, the reality of the competition continuum, the massive challenge of anti-access and area denial. Now we get to the sharp end, the absolute apex of operational risk. Joint Forcible Entry operations.
This is where the rubber meets the road, doctrinally speaking. Joint Forcible Entry is what you do when you can't get access through diplomacy or cooperation. You have to seize it against armed opposition.
How did Joint Publication 318 formally define it?
It defines it as a joint operation. Its purpose is to seize and hold a military lodgment in the face of armed opposition, specifically for the continuous landing of forces.
A lodgment, like a foothold.
Exactly. A secure area, maybe an airfield, a port, or key terrain that you capture and hold so you can pour in more troops and supplies. Joint Publication 3.0 adds that the goal is often to strike at the enemy's centers of gravity or open up new lines of operation for follow-on campaigns.
It's punching through a defended perimeter.
It is an act of decisive penetration into a denied area, extremely high risk.
And it's structured very deliberately. 3 distinct phases, right? Walk us through those.
Yes. Joint Publication 318 lays them out clearly. Phase 1 is preparation and deployment. This isn't the assault itself, but getting ready for it.
What does that involve?
Rapidly moving specialized forces, the ones actually conducting the initial entry, either directly into the operational area, if possible, or more likely to nearby staging areas. It's about positioning assets, gathering intelligence, setting the conditions.
Okay, conditions set. Then comes Phase 2, the main event.
Phase 2 is the assault. This is the kinetic part. It begins with the actual joint force assaults. Could be airborne troops parachuting in, air assault troops landing via helicopter, or an amphibious landing from the sea.
What are they seizing?
Initial objectives within that planned lodgment. These are usually minimal, but absolutely critical. Seizing that airfield, securing the port facilities, taking key high ground overlooking the landing area. This phase ends once those initial objectives are secured and consolidated.
And Phase 3, it's not over once you've landed, is it?
Not by a long shot. Phase 3 is stabilization of the lodgment. This is incredibly intense and resource demanding.
Why? What needs to happen?
First, you have to secure the perimeter. Protect the forces you just inserted from enemy counterattack. Second, you have to rapidly organize the lodgment itself to handle the follow-on forces and the massive amount of supplies that need to start flowing in almost immediately.
Getting those ports and airfields working.
Exactly. Repairing damage, setting up traffic control, establishing logistics nodes. And third, you often need to expand the lodgment perimeter to give yourself more room, more security, and prepare for subsequent operations pushing further inland.
And if that transition from assault to stabilization falters?
The whole operation is incredibly vulnerable. If you can't secure the lodgment and get the logistics flowing, the assault force can be isolated and destroyed. Phase 3 is critical.
To really understand the stakes here, history offers some tough lessons. The doctrine itself uses examples. Let's talk about Operation Sutton in the Falklands War, 1982. Joint Publication 318 uses it as a cautionary tale, right?
A very sobering one. It shows just how vulnerable the sustainment piece is during forcible entry. The British forces did successfully land amphibious troops at San Carlos. That part worked. But the Argentine Air Force made a critical decision. They didn't primarily target the soldiers on the beaches. They went after the ship supporting the landing. The logistics tail.
The supply line.
Exactly. And within days, their air attacks were devastating. They sank a destroyer, 2 frigates. They badly damaged crucial logistic landing ships.
What was the immediate impact on the operation, besides losing ships?
Joint Publication 318 specifically mentions the loss of one container ship, the Atlantic Conveyor. It was carrying vital heavy-lift helicopters. Losing those helicopters instantly crippled the British plan for moving troops and supplies inland from the beachhead.
The whole logistics plan was thrown off.
Fundamentally broken. The campaign slowed down, became much riskier, all because the enemy correctly identified and successfully attacked a critical vulnerability in the sustainment architecture. It goes right back to that need for resilience and redundancy we talked about.
Okay, that's the cautionary tale. Now let's contrast it with a major success. Operation Chromite, the landing at Incheon during the Korean War in 1950. That achieved strategic surprise, didn't it?
It was a textbook example of bold planning and execution, though incredibly risky. Remember, Yuan forces had been pushed back almost to the sea at Pusan. General MacArthur conceived this amphibious assault way up the coast, deep behind enemy lines at Incheon.
What were the objectives?
3 main goals: land a large force successfully despite terrible tides and terrain, recapture the capital, Seoul, and, strategically most important, cut the main supply lines of the North Korean People's Army fighting down south.
That severing of the supply lines was the masterstroke.
It really was. Joint Publication 318 describes how, after massive naval gunfire and air bombardment prepared the way, the landing secured the beachhead. They established that critical lodgment.
And linked up with forces from the south.
Yes, eventually. Forces pushing north from the Kusan perimeter met the forces expanding from Incheon. It created this pincer movement and anvil effect that just shattered the North Korean army trapped between them. Chromite showed how a successful joint forcible entry can completely change the strategic situation by hitting the enemy's logistics and opening up entirely new fronts.
Success like Incheon clearly depends on incredibly tight integration and command, especially in a complex, multi-domain forcible entry. The roles of the different component commanders must be crystal clear.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Joint Publication 318 emphasizes this. You need clear responsibilities delegated by the overall Joint Force Commander to the land, maritime, and air component commanders. No ambiguity.
Let's start with the ground piece. The Joint Force Land Component Commander, what's their role in forcible entry?
Their job is to plan, coordinate, and use the designated land forces. Critically, in forcible entry, they typically command operations involving airborne or air assaults that originate from land bases. They'll designate who leads the specific assault force. Their main focus is seizing ground, holding it, expanding that physical lodgment.
Okay, land covered. What about the maritime side? Essential for getting forces there and providing support.
That's the Joint Force Maritime Component Commander. Their role is huge, integrating all the naval power surface ships for gunfire support and protection, submarines for covert operations or strikes, amphibious ships delivering the landing force. They coordinate all these naval and joint capabilities to support the amphibious part of the operation. They own sea control around the objective area.
Protecting that vulnerable fleet. And then the air component, crucial from the very start, especially against those anti-access and area denial systems.
Paramount. The Joint Force Air Component Commander has a massive task: planning, coordinating, synchronizing, integrating all air power, assigned or supporting.
What does that involve?
Against sophisticated defenses. It means establishing complex airspace control measures, area air defense plans to protect the force, deconflicting hundreds of aircraft, suppressing enemy air defenses so the landing can happen, and providing that vital, close air support, especially in the early hours when ground forces have little of their own heavy firepower.
And we shouldn't forget Special Operations Forces. They often play a unique role, sometimes even before the main landing.
Yes, their role, as Joint Publication 318 describes, is often crucial and highly flexible. They might go in first.
To do what?
Conduct special reconnaissance, finding out exactly where the enemy is, what defenses they have, maybe prepare the objective area subtly, or they could conduct small-scale raids to seize a specific limited objective ahead of the main force, like a key bridge or an isolated airfield.
They can also operate beyond the main landing area.
Definitely. Providing fire support from unexpected locations, or conducting direct action missions against enemy reserves or command centers far behind the lines, disrupting threats before they can reach the main lodgment. The big challenge, of course, is synchronizing these often covert, deep operations with the massive conventional assault. Deconfliction is vital.
That synchronization challenge brings us back to fire support. You mentioned the initial assault forces are light. They don't bring their own heavy artillery right away. So where does the firepower come from in those critical first hours?
This is a major constraint highlighted in the Doctrine, especially in Phase 2. Joint Publication 318 is blunt. Initial assault forces will likely have minimal, maybe even no, organic artillery support immediately available.
So they're completely reliant on others.
Almost entirely reliant on joint fire support. That means firepower delivered by aircraft fighters, bombers, drones, and by naval platforms, cruisers, destroyers, even submarines launching missiles.
Who controls all that fire?
The commander of the supported force, usually the ground commander in the lodgment, is responsible for prioritizing targets, timing the strikes, and specifying the desired effects, making sure those fires are concentrated effectively against the enemy while crucially avoiding hitting friendly troops during that chaotic initial phase.
And finally, we end where we started in some ways. Logistics. The Achilles heel, potentially, as Operation Sutton showed. How does Doctrine address sustainment right from the beginning of a joint forcible entry?
The logistics plan has to be baked in from the absolute start, assuming the worst. Joint Publication 318 mandates planning for immediate early resupply. Those initial forces land light, with limited ammo, fuel, food, medical supplies, and they consume them fast.
So getting the supply lines open is job one after landing.
It's absolutely critical for Phase 3, stabilization. The whole plan hinges on rapidly securing, repairing if necessary, and organizing the ports and airfields that were seized, the aerial ports of debarkation and seaports of debarkation.
The APODs and SPODs.
Right. If you can't get those nodes operational quickly to handle the massive, continuous flow of personnel and material needed for the follow-on forces in the larger campaign,
And the assault force is stranded.
effectively stranded. The lodgment can't be reinforced, it can't be sustained, and it can't expand. It becomes a race against time. Establish that robust sustainment flow before the enemy can react, regroup, and counterattack to destroy the isolated beachhead or airhead. Hashtag outro. So, if we pull back and look at the whole picture, we've really traced this conceptual thread all the way from the top-level strategic guidance in the joint warfighting concept
Right.
down through how unified action is essential for navigating that perpetual competition continuum.
Cooperation and competition always happening.
Always, and then culminating in the operational reality of how you actually achieve access when necessary through something like joint forcible entry. The whole doctrinal structure you see is built to address that core challenge we discussed, anti-access and area denial.
Yeah, and the big takeaway for you, listening, shouldn't just be the definitions. It's seeing how these concepts link together. Why things like resilience, depth, redundancy, why they're not just buzzwords but mandatory requirements.
Because history, like Operation Sutton, teaches brutal lessons about what happens when those requirements aren't met. The enemy will target your seams, your logistics, your unity of effort.
So understanding this doctrine, really analyzing it like we've tried to do, it's just fundamental to appreciating the sheer complexity of modern military challenges. It's this constant balancing act, isn't it, between high-level cooperation, persistent competition, and being ready for that high-stakes conflict.
The integration itself is the constant struggle. The Joint Force Commander is always trying to maintain global integration, balance risks across different regions, get cohesive action across all domains.
While juggling partners who don't work for them.
Exactly. Dealing with interagency partners, multinational allies, all with their own constraints. The doctrine acknowledges how hard it is, but the requirement remains. Achieve that unity of effort. Achieve mission success.
Okay, here's a final thought for you to chew on. Drawing from that strategic guidance in Joint Publication 1, Volume 1. It connects back to resilience, but looks even further ahead. We talked about resilience as the ability to survive that initial attack, right? Through depth, redundancy, interoperability. But the doctrine issues a warning. It says the challenge doesn't actually end when the fighting stops.
What does it say?
Joint Publication 1, Volume 1 states pretty clearly that after any conflict, new competitions will emerge. They will challenge whatever operational or strategic gains were made. There's no permanent victory lap.
So you can't just win and go home.
Exactly. The joint force can't expect any level of permanence. So the ultimate, maybe the enduring challenge for that joint force commander isn't just winning the war. It's organizing the entire force for continuous, perpetual competition and campaigning. Because the moment one phase ends, whether it's cooperation, conflict, the competition just starts again, maybe in a new form. It never really stops.